let's talk about our overall hotkey layout. Now, it's going to vary from person to person a little bit, but as a general rule, you always want your hatcheries, your command centers, your nexi, whatever command structures they are, to all be on pretty much this, the most accessible hotkey, or one of the most accessible. You'll notice in this case we've got it on number 1. Now notice we also have our spawning pool. This is usually our upgrade hotkey, but in the early game we don't really have one, so that's going to be just there on number 6, one of our less accessible hotkeys. We're going to replace that with our Evo chambers. So Evo chambers can be up on number 6. That's where it starts to get further away from your hand. So what do we use 2, 3, 4, and 5 for? Well, as a Zerg player, it's very important to have a Creep Queen hotkey. So for me, I'm going to use 1 for hatcheries, 2, 3, and 5 for army, and 4 for Creep Queens. That's just my personal preference. The important thing is to have at least 3 army hotkeys, preferably even 4. In this case, a Creep Queen hotkey as well. Something for your hatcheries. And if you've got that, that's going to be great. Now, if you are... oh my god. If you are Terran or Protoss, keep in mind you need to also have a Barracks and Factory Starport hotkey, or a Robo and Gateway hotkey. There's a few ways you can do that. If you don't want to take up too much hotkeys on your production, then you do it the same way as me. You'd basically put your Robos and Stargates, or your Factories and Starports, on this same number 4, and you'd put your Barracks or Gateways on number 5, or vice versa. And you'd still leave a bunch of hotkeys available. And because we said, oh, those hotkeys, they're not that accessible, right? Well, that's where you can come in and you can open up another hotkey if you want. W, as I said on the keyboard, you can remap something like 0 off the keyboard onto W. So let's just show how to do that. Let's say I want one more hotkey on the left-hand side of my keyboard that's easy to reach. Let's go into Global, Control Groups. Oh, we've got to go back to Standard to do this, of course. Control Groups, and you can take something like Control 0. That's such an inaccessible hotkey, and you can just change that. You just change Create Control Group. You change Select Control Group. Oh, whoops. Press the wrong thing there. So obviously you just change it to the corresponding single letter. So you're just changing the zeros to W's in these 3 commands. And then you can save things on W, just as you normally would. So W suddenly becomes a hotkey, and that becomes great. Now, definitely there's a lot of other information out there about what the best hotkey setups are. The important thing is when you're starting out, just come up with a plan for it, and make sure you do try and emulate something that's efficient. Just make sure you have 3 army hotkeys and enough hotkeys for all your production. That's the most important thing. Alright, so one more thing we can talk about here, it's a Zerg-specific mechanic, is hotkeying eggs.